Welcome to Global Revolution Today. We dive into NATO's increasing involvement in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. As tensions rise, Poland has deployed F-16 fighter jets, and Germany is preparing a massive military response. This escalation follows Ukraine's recent attacks on Russian territory and Russia's retaliatory actions. Let's break down what's happening and explore the implications of these developments. The war between Russia and Ukraine has taken a dramatic turn in recent days. After Ukraine launched missile attacks on Russian soil, including the use of long-range ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles, Russia responded with force. This escalation was met with a significant shift in NATO's stance. Poland, a NATO member, has deployed F-16 fighter jets to bolster defense efforts against Russia. However, it's Germany's response that has captured the world's attention. Recently, secret documents from the German government were exposed, revealing that Germany is preparing for a potential Third World War. Under the operation codenamed Operation Deutschland, Germany is reportedly preparing to deploy up to 800,000 NATO troops and 200,000 military vehicles to Ukraine. This revelation comes at a time when Russia's President Vladimir Putin has repeatedly warned the West of his nuclear capabilities. Russia's threats became more concrete after Ukraine's missile strikes on Russian territory. The attacks targeted military sites in the Belgorod and KSK regions, raising alarms in Moscow. In retaliation, Russia launched its first-ever intercontinental ballistic missile ICBM on Ukrainian soil. The RS-26 Rubez ICBM, capable of carrying a nuclear warhead, struck the city of Deno in Ukraine. This missile, with a range of 5,800 kilometers, marks a new level of escalation. Despite these tensions, Ukrainian officials clarified that the ICBM did not carry a nuclear payload. The exposure of Germany's secret military plans adds a new layer to the already volatile situation. Germany, which has been one of Ukraine's strongest European allies, is preparing for an even greater military commitment. Alongside NATO's increased readiness, countries like Finland, Norway, and Denmark have taken steps to prepare their citizens for potential war. Finland has warned of an escalating conflict, urging its citizens to prepare for emergencies. In Norway, the government has issued guidelines on how to survive extreme conditions, including how to sustain oneself for up to a week during a crisis. Denmark, too, has advised its citizens to stockpile essential supplies, anticipating a possible prolonged conflict. Amid these preparations, Poland has also responded. The Polish military deployed F-16 fighter jets following Russia's missile strikes on Ukrainian targets, particularly in the western regions. This deployment aligns with NATO's broader strategy to protect its member states and support Ukraine in its defense against Russian aggression. Poland's statement emphasized its role in maintaining security in the region, as it pledged to stand alongside Ukraine in this critical time. The Polish military's involvement reflects NATO's increasing commitment to the conflict, signaling a potential escalation in the alliance's direct involvement. In addition to NATO's military responses, geopolitical tensions have further intensified with North Korea's involvement. North Korea has aligned itself with Russia, deploying troops to support Moscow's efforts in Ukraine. This partnership is fueling further global instability, as it brings together nations with diverging interests and raises the stakes for global peace. As the conflict deepens, the world watches closely to see how NATO and other global powers will navigate this increasingly complex and dangerous situation. The escalation in the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the exposure of Germany's military strategy have sent shockwaves across the globe. NATO's preparations, along with the heightened military presence in Europe, signal that this war may soon reach new heights. As tensions continue to mount, it remains to be seen how world leaders will respond to these developments and whether further military action will be taken to either de-escalate or intensify the war. Following recent developments, the German armed forces have implemented a highly classified strategy known as Operation Deutschland, which has drawn significant attention. According to the German newspaper Frankfurter Allgemeine, this strategy, outlined in a 1,000-page document, reveals key infrastructure and facilities that Germany would prioritize for protection in the event of military emergencies. The plan also details how businesses and civilians should support military efforts, including ways to increase self-sufficiency. It emphasizes preparing for worst-case scenarios, advising citizens to consider using diesel generators and wind turbines to ensure energy supply during emergencies. The exposure of Germany's secret plans comes at a time when tensions between Russia and Ukraine have reached a boiling point. As the conflict intensifies, there are growing fears that the war could escalate into a broader global conflict, with Ukraine caught in the middle. The leaked documents suggest that Germany is preparing to deploy 800,000 NATO troops and 200,000 vehicles to Ukraine if the war expands. This marks a significant shift in Germany's role, from supporting Ukraine with arms to actively preparing for direct involvement in the conflict. The release of these documents has captured global attention, raising concerns about the future of European security. In the midst of these revelations, German Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock has been outspoken about the threat of nuclear escalation. She recently accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of expanding Russia's nuclear doctrine to include more aggressive threats against the West. At a meeting with the foreign ministers of Poland, France, and Italy, Baerbock stressed that Germany would not be intimidated by Russia's nuclear posturing. She reiterated Germany's commitment to supporting Ukraine and warned that the country would stand firm in the face of threats. Baerbock's comments highlight the growing urgency in Europe to confront the dangers posed by Russia's expanding military aggression. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has also faced intense pressure over his decisions regarding military aid to Ukraine. Despite Germany being one of Ukraine's largest supporters, opposition figures have criticized Scholz for not sending long-range Taurus missiles to Ukraine, citing fears of escalating the conflict. Critics, including opposition leader Florian Hahn, accused Scholz of prioritizing domestic political interests over Germany's international responsibilities. As the country approaches early elections, Hahn has argued that Scholz's reluctance to send missiles reflects a desire to maintain the support of the left-wing factions within his party. The political dynamics within Germany are adding another layer of complexity to the already tense situation. Despite these challenges, Germany has continued to provide substantial military support to Ukraine. On November 20th, the German government announced another major military aid package, including self-propelled howitzers, anti-aircraft guns, ammunition for infantry fighting vehicles, and reconnaissance drones. These supplies are crucial to Ukraine's efforts to counter Russian aggression, and Germany has proven to be a key player in ensuring Ukraine receives the necessary resources. Earlier in the war, Germany also contributed to the creation of a tank coalition, sending Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine following the US decision to send Abrams tanks. This move encouraged other countries, including Poland, to provide German-made Leopard tanks, further strengthening Ukraine's defenses. As the war enters one of its most intense phases, the situation remains highly volatile. The escalation of violence following Ukraine's missile strikes on Russian soil has set the stage for further confrontations. Russia's recent use of an intercontinental ballistic missile against Ukraine marks a dramatic new chapter in the conflict, raising global concerns about the potential for nuclear escalation. Ukraine, on the other hand, has continued to target Russian forces with precision missiles, signaling its determination to push back against Russia's invasion. What happens next is uncertain, but the intensity of the conflict suggests that the coming months will be pivotal in shaping the future of the war and the broader geopolitical landscape. The Ukrainian army has significantly escalated the conflict by launching air operations within Russian territory, Using long-range ATACMS and Storm Shadow missiles, Ukraine successfully targeted military installations inside Russia. In response, Russia conducted a missile strike on the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, located in the Dnipropetrovsk region, utilizing an intercontinental ballistic missile (ICBM) for the attack. Russian President Vladimir Putin later claimed that the missile used in this attack was a new medium-range ballistic missile named the Oresnik, which is designed to carry nuclear warheads. However, Ukrainian officials have not confirmed the missile's specifics, and there were no nuclear warheads found on the launched missile. Putin had previously warned that Russia would retaliate against any country that uses long-range weapons to strike Russian targets. In a statement, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Putin of using Ukraine as a testing ground for these weapons. The missile strike caused significant damage in Dnipro, with an industrial enterprise, 2 houses and 9 garages being hit. 2 fires were also reported. Despite the attack, Ukraine quickly responded, with its forces targeting Russian positions using HIMARS missiles. The Zaporizhzhia region, which had been under Russian control since the early months of the war, remains a focal point of the conflict. This area is of particular importance because it houses Europe's largest nuclear power plant. Ukrainian forces have been focused on reclaiming this region. Ukrainian drone pilots, conducting reconnaissance flights, identified a concentration of Russian soldiers in the area. After monitoring their movements, Ukrainian forces launched a successful attack with HIMARS missiles, eliminating 7 Russian soldiers. 3 soldiers were killed immediately, and 4 others died from injuries. This attack is not an isolated event. Earlier in November, Ukraine used FPV drones to strike Russian soldiers stationed at a training ground in Rostov Oblast. And in September, Ukrainian forces launched rockets at a Russian training site, killing dozens. HIMARS missiles, a key weapon for Ukraine, continue to be supplied by the US as part of a military aid package. The latest US support, totaling $275 million, includes more HIMARS ammunition, marking the 70th tranche of aid to Ukraine under the Biden administration. Since August 2021, the United States has been providing a comprehensive military aid package to Ukraine. This package includes a variety of equipment aimed at enhancing Ukraine's defensive capabilities. Notably, it contains high-mobility artillery rocket systems, HIMARS, and ammunition for these systems. Artillery rounds of 150 mm and 105 mm, 60 mm mortar shells, unmanned aerial systems, and anti-armor systems. Additional supplies include small arms, ammunition, demolition equipment, and protective gear for chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear threats. Alongside these materials, the package also covers spare parts, auxiliary equipment, services, and the necessary training and transportation to support the Ukrainian forces in their operations. HIMARS, a crucial component of the aid package, has proven to be a game-changer for Ukraine. These rocket systems are capable of launching a variety of missiles, including the GMLRS, which have demonstrated remarkable accuracy in striking Russian positions. The HIMARS system can deliver projectiles over distances ranging from 70 kilometers to several hundred kilometers, making it a versatile tool for both long-range precision strikes and tactical support. Its effectiveness has been witnessed firsthand in Ukraine's ongoing conflict with Russia, where it has targeted key Russian military infrastructure. In response to Ukraine's increased use of HIMARS and other precision-guided weapons, Russia has ramped up its missile production. According to Ukrainian media sources, Russia has amassed a stockpile of over 1,500 missiles, including advanced missiles with ranges exceeding 350 kilometers. This increase in production has been fueled by the need to counter Ukraine's attacks, particularly on energy infrastructure, which has been a focal point of Russia's strategy in recent months. Despite international sanctions and embargoes, Russia has managed to significantly boost its missile output, with reports indicating that production has increased from around 115 to 130 strategic missiles per month to as many as 170. Furthermore, Russia has also focused on bolstering its stock of long-range Iskander missiles. By mid-November 2023, reports suggest that Russia had accumulated at least 350 Iskander missiles, with plans to produce an additional 70 by the end of the month. The Kalibr missile, another critical asset for Russia, continues to dominate its missile arsenal with nearly 400 units in storage and a steady production schedule. Amidst these developments, international diplomatic efforts to resolve the conflict have continued. Chinese President Xi Jinping, who maintains strong ties with Russia, called for more voices advocating for peace in the Ukraine conflict. Speaking during a visit to Brazil, Xi expressed hope for a political solution and emphasized the importance of diplomacy in resolving global conflicts. Brazilian President Lula da Silva echoed these sentiments, underscoring that both Brazil and China prioritize peace and dialogue as means to address the ongoing strife in Ukraine. Lula also noted that while the world desires an end to the war, meaningful action to achieve peace has been scarce. All eyes have turned to potential changes in the U.S. leadership, particularly with the possibility of former President Donald Trump returning to power, as his stance on ending the war could significantly influence international responses. On the ground in Ukraine, the Ukrainian army has made notable advances. One of the most significant moments came when Ukrainian forces, using drones, struck an oil refinery in Saratov, one of Russia's largest fuel sources. This victory dealt a major blow to Russia's energy infrastructure and added complexity to the regional conflict. The success of Ukraine's operations has sparked a series of challenges for Russia, revealing vulnerabilities in its defense strategy. Ukrainian forces have exploited these weaknesses to gain small but critical advantages, which have disrupted Russia's military operations and forced the Kremlin to rethink its strategies. As the conflict unfolds, the situation in the Donetsk region has become increasingly tense. Despite facing setbacks in other areas, Russia has shifted its focus to Donetsk, where it has launched aggressive military campaigns. The region, which has been a focal point of the war, has seen numerous Russian attempts to break through Ukrainian defenses. These maneuvers, while showing the complexity of the situation, also highlight Russia's desperation to maintain its territorial gains. The strategic importance of Donetsk makes it a critical battleground, and the shift in Russian tactics signals a new phase in the war with potential for further escalation. The ongoing struggles in Donetsk suggest that the conflict may continue to evolve into a more complicated and drawn-out struggle, with both sides making significant pushes to secure key territories. Despite the claims that Russian actions would provoke more aggressive responses from Ukraine, Putin continued his attacks. However, recent events in Donetsk have significantly complicated the situation. The Russian army began moving toward the town of Kurakovo, marking a new phase in the ongoing conflict. This move, which carries a great deal of uncertainty, has triggered a variety of responses from Ukraine, further escalating the situation and pushing it toward a critical point. The regional crises faced by the Russian army, along with the intelligence that Ukraine's 33rd Brigade was aware of the upcoming assault, played a major role in shaping the unfolding events. This early warning allowed the Ukrainian forces to prepare effectively, shifting the momentum in their favor. Russian expectations were high, believing they could overcome the Ukrainian defense with a significant force of armored vehicles, including the advanced Leopard 2 tank. The 33rd Mechanized Brigade even released a video showing that the Russian army was preparing for a large-scale attack on Ukrainian positions in Kurakovo. The Russian forces arrived with numerous communication tanks and armored vehicles, but the Ukrainian defense successfully repelled the assault. This was a critical turning point, demonstrating the strength of the Ukrainian defense and undermining Russia's offensive strategies. Ukraine's use of unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, to target Russian munitions significantly altered the course of the battle. In southern Kurakovo, a Ukrainian Leopard 2 tank destroyed a Russian tank at very close range, and more than 24 Russian soldiers were neutralized. This victory was followed by reports that, in October alone, Ukrainian forces had detonated 2 Russian tanks and 6 armored vehicles. These successes highlighted the vulnerability of Russian forces in the region and underscored the growing effectiveness of Ukraine's military tactics. The presence of North Korean troops, reportedly supporting Russia, added another layer of complexity to the situation, complicating Russia's ability to make significant gains despite heavy losses. The conflict in the region continued to intensify, with more than 65 clashes reported on November 11th alone. Russian forces with air support attempted to advance toward key areas including Alinka, Novokelida, and Kurakovo. Putin's policies, which have been a major source of the escalating conflict, remained at the forefront of discussions. However, despite these continued efforts, the Ukrainian army was able to launch a large-scale operation against Russia, gaining crucial victories. One of the most notable successes occurred when Ukrainian forces launched several drone attacks on Russian military units in Bryansk. The attacks were significant enough that even Russian officials, who usually focus on propaganda, acknowledged the damage. The governor of Bryansk confirmed the attack, stating that a fire broke out in non-residential buildings. This confirmation highlighted the increasing pressure on Russian forces and demonstrated Ukraine's growing ability to disrupt Russian operations. Additionally, Ukraine scored another major victory with a dramatic strike in Saratov. Ukrainian forces used UAVs to attack a Russian oil refinery, causing a fire and creating confusion in the region. Local residents reported the incident, and images from the scene were widely circulated. While some initially thought the fire was related to routine oil refining operations, it was clear from the timing and the scale of the attack that it was a direct military strike. The operation in Saratov further showcased Ukraine's ability to exploit weaknesses in Russia's defense, signaling a shift in the balance of power in the region. These developments highlight the growing effectiveness of Ukraine's military operations, the shifting momentum in the conflict, and the increasing complexity of Russia's military situation. The ongoing battles and strategic victories in places like Donetsk, Kurakovo, and Saratov are reshaping the regional dynamics, with significant implications for both sides. In the aftermath of the recent attack on Saratov, the Russian government quickly responded with an official statement. Governor Roman Boran confirmed that drones had targeted the city, but he insisted that all of them had been shot down. However, there were claims suggesting that some of the unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, veered off course and crashed into nearby industrial areas, sparking a fire. These claims, though, don't hold much logical weight. What's more significant is the increasing clarity surrounding the strategies being employed against Russia's military, particularly in how these actions are beginning to present much larger challenges for them. Reports from Saratov 24 indicated that the wreckage of one of the drones landed at the Saratov oil refinery. Preliminary findings suggest that the drone struck a fuel tank and damaged some private facilities. While it's unclear whether this was a direct attack on a critical facility, this marks another example of Ukraine's growing advantage in the region. Russia's inability to take effective countermeasures against Ukraine raises questions about what steps they can take moving forward. It's becoming evident that Russia is struggling to respond to Ukraine's increasing dominance, further highlighting the mounting issues they are facing as the war continues to evolve. This shift in dynamics is not just about tactical victories. It signals a larger transformation in the war's trajectory. Ukraine has rapidly focused on leveraging every advantage it has, particularly through the use of drones and other advanced technologies. From the beginning of the war in February 2022, Putin's strategy relied heavily on quick territorial gains, expecting minimal resistance. However, with significant support from the US and other Western nations, Ukraine has been able to adapt and strengthen its defense, causing the conflict to take an entirely new direction. As the war nears its third year, Putin's situation has become increasingly dire. Early hopes of a swift victory have long since faded, and the Russian leader has begun seeking alliances to bolster his position. His recent treaty with North Korea is a direct response to the growing strength of Ukraine's military. By October 2024, the conflict had escalated further, with no signs of de-escalation in sight. In fact, Putin, facing mounting challenges, continues to launch relentless attacks across Ukraine, despite the growing toll on Russian forces. On the other hand, Ukraine's forces have become more proactive, thanks to both external support and the development of domestically produced drones. Another crucial factor in the war's future could be the outcome of the US presidential election. With Donald Trump winning the presidency in November, the future of US support for Ukraine has become uncertain. Trump has long been vocal about his belief that aid to Ukraine was unnecessary, and many are now wondering how his administration will approach the conflict once he takes office in January. Although Trump has softened his stance on Ukraine in recent months, his arrival in the White House could significantly alter the course of US policy. Until then, President Biden's administration has continued to accelerate support packages to Ukraine, ensuring the country receives crucial military aid. Despite the Ukrainian leader's request to use US weapons on Russian soil to achieve absolute victory, the Biden administration has refused to authorize such actions, fearing it could lead to a broader global crisis. However, the dynamic is shifting. With North Korea now directly supporting Russia, the situation could change dramatically. North Korean troops have already been deployed in conflict zones like the KSK region, and their involvement could pave the way for a new phase in the war. If North Korea continues to back Russia with military resources, Ukraine may soon be granted the authorization it has long sought to use US-made long-range missiles against Russian targets. This development could mark a significant turning point, signaling the start of a high-stakes phase in the conflict that could reshape the future of the war. The ongoing war raises key questions. What will be Trump's stance on the conflict? Will Putin and North Korea's nuclear threats escalate further? Why does Putin persist with a depleted army? These critical issues remain unresolved, and their answers will influence the course of the war. From the start, Ukraine has received substantial military and humanitarian aid, including missile systems, combat equipment, and fuel. As winter approaches, these supplies have been accelerated to bolster Ukraine's defense. Putin initially had high confidence, but this shifted in August 2023 when Ukrainian troops entered Russian territory, disrupting Putin's plans and exposing vulnerabilities in the Russian military. Ukraine's military strategy has been focused and effective, targeting Russian military infrastructure such as ammunition depots and aircraft hangars, which has crippled Russian movement. With this approach, Ukraine has gained an upper hand, and as the war enters a new year, the direction remains uncertain. Will the North Korean alliance help Russia, or will Ukraine continue to prevail? Ukraine has also gained an advantage with drones and unmanned aerial vehicles, UAVs, which have been crucial in destroying high-value Russian assets. These technological advancements have made the war more about precision and intelligence, with drones providing detailed reconnaissance and targeted strikes on Russian positions. This shift positions Ukraine as a growing power in the global defense industry. Putin's early expansionist goals included aggression toward Poland, which led to stronger border security and greater Western support for Ukraine. As the war has progressed, Putin's aggressive strategies may lead to Ukraine's eventual victory. Ukraine's long-range weaponry has enabled it to reclaim more territory, putting Putin on the defensive. Despite significant casualties, Putin continues the war. The Russian military has lost thousands of troops, and this number is expected to rise in the coming year. Putin's approval ratings have dropped significantly, and his promise to keep the war confined to Ukraine has been broken as Ukrainian forces advance on Russian soil. The occupation of over 100 settlements in the KSK region and the displacement of Russian civilians have fueled resentment toward Putin, who is increasingly blamed for the war's disastrous effects. Thanks for watching and being part of this journey. As we continue to explore the complexities of this world, let's stay hopeful and committed to positive change. Make sure to subscribe and stay updated for more insightful discussions. Your support means a lot.